Hello, good afternoon, everyone. This is Anamika Pashaldi, signing up as host to welcome you all to the third track for the day on health tech. Before we move on to the session, let me introduce to you all our moderator for this session, Mr. Mohan Sundaram. Speaking about Mohan Sundaram, he is the president and trustee at the Association of People with Disability, Bangalore, India. He is also the CEO and founding director at Artilab Foundation, a first of its kind incubator worldwide and ecosystem builder for assistive and rehabilitation healthcare solutions. He continues to be a mentor at NSRCL IIM Bangalore since 2009. He has worked and excelled across a wide range of industries in top management and business leadership roles, with strategy and technology being the anchor for over 24 years out of the 33 years. Have been starting up technology-based business for over 22 years in various industries and have spanned all functions in organizations with hands-on responsibilities. He have worked for Indian and MNCs with global responsibilities. He have been engaged with incubation since 2009 in NSRCEL, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and have mentored over 800 entrepreneurs. He has been associated with the NGO sector in the disability section since 2013, deeply involved in building out a federation and innovations for disability elevation. The last 4 years were steeped in the intersection of innovations and disability, leading to his current role. I cordially welcome you to the session, sir.
Thank you.
Moving on, the panelists for this session. Today we have Indira Narayanan, Regulatory Affairs Quality Assurance Director, Intuitive Surgical India Private Limited, Ms. Manimuri Theodore, Scientist at the DRDO, Divyashri, Systems Engineer at Infosys, and Akash P, student from Ramaya Institute of Technology. Let me now kindly pass my handle over to our moderator, Mr. Mohan Sundaram, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Anamika, and welcome to all the panelists, and thank you for sparing your time. So without much ado, let's head out for the panel discussion. It's a broad question. Now we know that medical device space is large, and electronics is a large part of it. However, there are multiple dimensions to this whole industry. So from each of your own spaces that you've been in and experiences, can you sort of enlighten the crowd as to what kind of careers graduates can look at in this field? And what would be some requisite qualifications, or is there no qualification? Can they come from any? Would like to go first, Indira?
Yeah, thank you, Mohan ji, for allowing me to be part of this panel. So I've been in industry, in medtech industry for about since 2006. Okay, so I'm a regulatory affairs and a quality assurance professional. I have worked with four different medical device companies. So we can, when you look at a medical device company or a medtech company, you can see wide variety of people with wide, experience and functions or disciplines coming in. So there are pharmaceuticals who are with pharmaceutical experience or pharmaceutical knowledge or a degree, coming in and working on regulatory affairs, quality assurance, quality control, and even the manufacturing sector. And you have the supply chain logistics, which are really very different from when you look at a very simple form of logistics chain when compared to the pharmaceutical area or even FMCG or anything. And then you also have clinical research people. They could be doctors, they could be biostatisticians, they could be clinical research specialized postgraduate people with any of the life sciences. And regulatory affairs usually are a mixture of life science, pharmaceutical, and all this. And you see salespeople, engineers or pharmaceutical in that, or life science also in that. But these are all very traditional type of disciplines which you see. But medtech industry is so very variant. that you've started seeing different emerging technologies, the newer technologies. So in that, the first one which you could talk about is a data science. Data officers are some of them, data analysts, data mining, all these related to data. And then you also see cyber security related people coming in, having their functions within that. And you see AI and 3D printing and all this. These are very, very brand new. Probably there are very few degrees within that, but they are all developing. So the basic graduation in a life science or an engineering science, and then moving on to specialization, very small courses, probably you would find some on online, would actually be what you see as a present trend. Thank you.
Dr. Manimuri.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. In double recent in COVID-19 days, I can tell, we have done a few things. In the biomedical instrumentation is the main area we are working in. So we have taken up some assignments these days. One is towards protection for COVID-19. Two kind of protection. One is called personal protection, another is collective protection. So actually earlier onwards, we are working on a project called biothreat mitigation. This COVID-19 comes similar to that biothreat. So some of the assignments earlier, what we have done in this for this biothreat, we have taken it a little higher scales. You can say that we have developed PPEs, protective equipments for medical and care people, as well as shifting of patients from one area to another area without spreading. That is, we call it as bags with protective bags, where or suits you can call it. Some of them are suits where the patient can wear it, and it is with positive pressure, and even doctor can test them when they are wearing also. And while they are moving, they are still not spreading the viruses, the infection around. Then there is some collective protection equipments or thing also we have worked on. One is called negative pressure tents. So that actually this COVID, only one country near it has treated is Singapore, which had a 500-bed negative pressure hospitals, which it has kept it ready for SARS time. It was useful. They told that it has able to help this COVID-19 time as Singapore to come out well because of this negative pressure hospital. Actually, double we have worked and developed a negative pressure tent where 10 patients and a doctor can be kept, and the oxygen exchanges is very fast, so that the one is with a filter, the virus won't escape to the environment. The patients will be treated with a flow of oxygen. But additionally, what we have done is, one is for when double is working for Tejas aircraft for development of pilots oxygen systems. That variant of it we have done as a medical oxygen plant. So the oxygen generation system, oxygen plant in industry is from a liquid plants. They used to do the chemical plants, which is of Breca and all. It's a very heavy investive systems, and many are not available in one state, only may have one. Whereas these medical oxygen plants are oxygen generating systems up to 95% of oxygen and can be kept in every hospital also. And that plans we have taken it up, and a few states we have got it installed. For example, it is got installed in Assam, in the Medical College Hospital in Guwahati. And a few other states are it is progressing for this medical oxygen plants. The next one is what we have done is we have done that same thing for the medical oxygen plant is for a huge hospital. Instead, whether we can take it up as a individual portable medical oxygen generation system. that we are working on, and in a month or two, that systems may be ready. That another one, what we have done is that oxygen cylinders are very huge. That person who needs oxygen is mobile, and just because he wants oxygen, he should be make it immobile. Instead, we are working out a composite cylinders, which is very portable and light, 2.5 kgs, where that same oxygen with the mobility, he can hold the composite cylinder and he can take the oxygen as well as he can move. This is all comes under a carrying system. Of course, regarding treatment, we have developed something called telemedicine. Of course, ISRO also has a telemedicine. The difference is our telemedicine system is the vital parameters are monitored as though doctor is nearby, live, and it is the same instruments are designed, and it has been you at a far end, the doctor can see and live, and he can move that things whatever way he wants also. That is the telemedicine system we are developing for Navy for the Sukhyan shows, which has been inducted recently, and it's will be dedicated to the nation also sooner. That one also is applicable in the COVID scenarios. Yes, the next one is the actually, if you see the COVID-19 scenario or any bio threat mitigation scenario, the final one is treatment. And of course, that belongs to ICMR or a medical fraternity, and double is not working in the area of treatment. Yes, testing, yes. The BSL-3 facility, we are planning to take it up sooner, so that BSL-3 facility will give accurate testing, and we are not working in any testing research. Yes, to do even this much, Double has engineers and scientists with various expertise: textile engineering, computer science engineering, biomedical engineering, electronics and instrument engineers, medical physicists, doctors, and chemists, environmental engineering, and composite specialist, mechanical engineering, to name a few of them. Of course, I'm electronics and communication engineer basically, and computer science and robotics I have done subsequently. So with this, with this introduction, I thought I'll expecting the remaining panelists and the youth to ask the questions.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Munir. Can we have Divya, can you say what you have seen?
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. And I would like to thank YCC for this wonderful opportunity. When we talk about electronics, and as a biomedical graduate, we generally come across analog and digital electronics. But as we see, the industry requires embedded technologies, making use of sensors that incorporate IoT, like respiratory sensors and blood pressure sensors, to name a few. So the basic programming knowledge required is C and C++. So such programming concepts are key for professional and internship opportunities in this field. Talking about the latest upcoming machine learning and deep learning trends, where we see that frameworks are available open source, but we need to key in our concepts of biomedical, physiological signal processing and even image processing, so that it could be scalable. And when I say scalable, it could mean that use cloud for storage of data, to access it across distances where telemedicine plays a major role, and to even do analysis. So these are the fields that I feel are emerging, having many courses available online too, for internship opportunities as well as professional opportunities.
Thank you. Akash?
Hello, sir. Firstly, I'd like to thank all of you for spending this time. It's a great opportunity to talk with all of you. I'm a graduate, medical electronics graduate from Raman Institute of Technology. I've done my 4 years there. And I have 1 year's experience with my placement opportunities as well. We have a placement department as well. So as far as the careers are concerned, I can't tell because I'm a student. So but I can tell you what kind of careers we look forward, and the normal placement opportunities that we get are normally like technician roles or very simple basic roles that we get for our discipline right now at our college. So we expect very minimal. We expect very minimal kind of jobs or basic pay jobs. Yeah, and most of us pretty much go into IT at this point. So yeah, that's
Right. So the next question is for both Divyashree and Akash, because one is graduated and one is in the process of graduation. Right. Typically, students learn from doing projects. So one way is to do just any project in engineering. Second is to pick up an interesting project that could lead to a career for you. Right. It's always good to pick up a career-oriented project. Now, you may or may not get the inputs in the college to do such projects. You need to rely on external resources for that. So, what are the kind of communities that are available of professionals that can nurture talent, that can guide students from these colleges if they have to go into the space of medical electronics or medtech, as they would call? And is there some kind of collection or a repository of nice, good, industry-oriented projects that can be done in 6 months' time or 8 months' time, which students can pick up from? Maybe also look for mentors who can mentor them in those projects, thereby building a pathway for their own careers.
Yeah, sure, sir. So I would like to talk about, as when I was a part of IEEE EMBS chapter as a secretary in college, we as a society, we had regular idea contests where we would have key concepts and key project ideas like neural prosthetics, like wearable tech for ECG signal processing. So such concepts we would generally team up as four in a group, say one from first year, one from second year, one from third year and fourth year, so that we could, involve all skills and all expertise in that particular project needed. So once we got involved into this project process and we applied it as our undergraduate project too, we generally upload it to there is an option to upload it to the IEEE Explore, which is a digital library. So this digital library has many, many across many fields, not even biomedical engineering. But the key point is that you could key in the concepts that you are interested in, that you want to build your project on in this digital library, and you would be collaborating with others from various fields, from a computer science background, from instrumentation background. So I feel IEEE Explore library is a very, very, very good project hub.
Akash?
Hello, so can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in our college, as Divyashree told, we also have, I'm a part of the EMBS society of a college. It's a beautiful society which is run by Professor Sri Ram sir. And the thing about societies is that they give you a lot of exposure, and secondly, it's IEEE run. So you get a lot of funding from IEEE. So these projects which you were talking about, they get a lot of funding. So for example, we were actually working on prosthetics, 3D printed prosthetics for healthcare, in the healthcare domain. So we had run many workshops, and we had gone to different places across India to teach people 3D printing and how it can be helpful in prosthetics. So this is a huge exposure if you look at it from a standpoint. We got trained and we had to train people. So these societies give us that kind of exposure you need to make projects, and like you can take that 3D printing experience and build your own projects. So yeah, I really think societies play a big role in projects. And secondly, it's conferences, I guess. And because when you're presenting your papers at a conference, or you're hosting a conference like I did, you have more exposure to the different types of projects that others are coming up with. like your students and colleagues, how they are coming and how the industries are presenting their papers. So those two, I think, are the most major factors in giving you exposure and helping you with your projects.
Sure. So just to follow on question to this, now that you said, so in these project hubs that you have, like IEEE or whatever, are the projects that go to a certain, up to a certain level, and then can the next team pick it up and take it to the next set of features that one has? So is there that sort of a chain that builds in developing a project from what is a very small idea onward to maybe a product over say 5 or 6 teams working sequentially? Have you seen that happen?
Yes, sir. And I would like to give an example of my undergraduate project. We developed a wearable silver textile electrode based ECG pickup system to monitor the maternal and fetal ECG in the 3rd trimester. So actually our seniors had come up with this prototype, but we, on testing it with the simulators and real-time data, we found out that we need to place the electrodes in a much more efficient way. So we changed the design. We incorporated amplifier designs too, because the amplifiers present in the open market are key to only recording from our gel-based electrode, which have less noise. But that's not the case with silver electrode. So we developed the process for that. And as we left, our juniors are working on the software to bring up a thresholding indicator to say that the heart rate is above a certain limit, please go meet the doctor. In the case of, say, village primary healthcare center, where they won't have the time, the resource, or maybe even the skill set to say notice the peak-to-peak differences between 2 ECG waves. So this way, this prototype, this product is continuously developing. So that would be a.
One other question I have is, for the kind of entry-level jobs that you see and what organizations want, are there any short-term courses that you can do in let's say, Coursera or Udemy or any of the other things that will help them skill themselves for these jobs?
So I think the other panelists should be because they have more experience in these aspects.
Yeah. Indra?
Yeah. So what I can say here is there are many things which are there online, but then when we are working towards developing a product itself, and then scaling it commercially, manufacturing it, and then getting the approval from the Ministry of Health, those are all the next step. The life cycle of the product only starts when you're able to make it into a commercial product. So all these informations are all they don't come as a traditional course, or they don't come as a some postgraduate diploma or anything. They're all learned from, that information is actually passed down from one to another or learned on the job generally. There could be some courses which could, fill the gap, or at least could give them the basic information on, they are all online, and then you could look up them. They would not be a complete course as such, which would give them the full information, but then they'll give them the basics from where they will have to pick it up. So it just depends on the students' interest to see what is that they want to. Even the regulatory affairs or the quality assurance or the quality control or manufacturing itself. These are some things which needs to be picked up online and then learned on job.
Sure.
Generally.
Yeah, I just want to add.
Yeah.
There is a IEEE journal for engineering for medicine and bioengineering. Biology, sorry, engineering for medicine and biology. The same conference also is there. It is a biannual conference, engineering for medicine and biology, because this is a area the biomedical comes. So it is a engineering as well as it is towards the medicine and biology. So in that dimension, you have to take the journal or the conference proceedings. That will be better. And as earlier panelists brought out, so that this is the system engineering is a better course to learn, so that when you bring out a product, what are the things to take up. And you can say that the standards to be followed are country to country different. For example, we are doing one above knee prosthetics, the knee ball, so that a knee joint, so that amputee can walk, drive, cycle, whatever you can do. So we are looking for a IEEE testing and standard for the AKP. So we are surprised to know that our country as on now don't have a testing facility, and I am working with one of the EU countries to take that testing, that is standard testing facility, ISO or IEEE standard testing facility for the tested AKP or any joint. That means we have many prosthetics in the country, many companies are doing. The international certifications, we are not so much following it or keen on it. So the Ministry of Health or the procedures, country to country, the procedures are different. So that is why a standard course may not be this possible for that. You have to go for regarding instrumentations or even let us say where what you want to use for as a external therapy or embedded instruments to a body, the rules are different. Biomedical instruments. Now Ministry of Health is coming up with standards. The Ministry of Health has come out with a standard for ventilators also in the COVID days of this year. And very different requirements and testing methodologies they have come out. Of course, our country is improving.
Yeah, thank you. So in my past, when I have looked at a lot of the graduates, freshers.
Mohan sir, can I add something to as a follow-up information to what Maniman said? So actually in India, regulations of the medical devices or medical technology products is in process now. Since 2017, since 2006, we have medical devices being regulated. Only certain categories were regulated, 23 plus, and going forward now we are, in the next 18 months or next 24, 18 plus 12 plus 24, that's about 30 to 42 months. All the products, medical device related products, are going to be regulated. Okay, so that means there's a whole area, regulatory affairs and quality assurance, which has not been explored. I have been in this field in regulatory affairs since 2006. And when I look at resourcing my own team, okay, I find it very difficult because people who are engineers look at only being IT people or, the very, very engineering side. But biomedical engineers or mechanical engineers can also become regulatory affairs specialists. They can also become quality assurance specialists. And they actually, the regulatory affairs is so very niche. It is not just documentation and things like that. It's a science involving the legal inputs, involving the management inputs. It involves the regulations which comes out from the local regulations, and it's a science by itself, but it's a combination. So that adds a lot of information. There are a lot of other opportunities which are there other than the IT related or engineering related ones. Just we need to be aware of that. Thank you.
Yeah. So responding to Dr. Manimuri, so I do understand, being in the space of disability and assistive tech, I know there are very few standards. Even WHO is trying to build a standard, and Sweden is coming up building the standard. There isn't one. All that is there in India is just some fatigue testing and some strength characteristics of devices, and it stops there. Nothing much on the functionality side. I think that's a large area for development in India. So amongst other things that I have seen when people try to recruit engineers or freshers, and what happens is they say, oh, we have to put them through our own training of 2 years, because even though they're engineers, they don't have the kind of skills that we want, right? It has been common that in other disciplines, like say even IT is a prime example, there are lots of finishing schools that help you get skill sets or train you to become productive in a very short while in industry, right? Are there any such finishing schools or institutes that offer any kind of short-term internships or anything like that that would make a student better prepared for industry as compared to being just a fresher? This is to Indira and Dr. Manimoy.
Yeah, good question. I think people should take up training for these short-term trainings focused. It is possible to train people, and subsequently job opportunities. That is the reason the training institutes are not coming. The actually school finals also getting IT trained because of the job opportunity. So you get the job opportunities. Certainly it will come now. We have seen these COVID days, that is import, medical, specifically medical instruments and imports are completely stopped, even components, isn't it? So that indigenization is taking it up as a higher priority. Yes, now I think this we should take it open and people should come up with short-term courses focused towards standards, towards implementation, towards this one, with the job opportunity subsequently, and deliver the standard products as well as export orientation. Yes, if we are getting a product, we are able to make it with the international quality. For example, I'll tell you the recent PPE itself. So many good, India has many textile firms. They have come up for making of PPEs. They are certified, yes. But still, I have not yet come across FDA certified reusable PPE. So there is two things in the PPE. As on now, if I ask any patient who was admitted for COVID and came out even asymptomatic or a minor symptom, they say they fear us, saying we are confined in a 100-bed hospital. Madam, the doctor is holding the PPE. Of course, she or he, the doctor is protected from the patients. But what about the doctor carrying the virus in the PPE from one patient to another? So at the end, they say that COVID has many varieties. That means if the doctor is visiting me as a 100th patient, I would have been susceptible to 100 different virus strains. What is this one? So actually there is a technology we have for PPE itself with a nanotechnology where these viruses can be disabled, and it need not take from one patient to another patient. But we don't have such a PPE. Technology is not so great. It is not a very complex missile technology required for that. But it is a simple one only. So one is investment, another one is knowledge, the second one is certification. These are all the three things it should go. And of course, this is as I said, this is the micro threat. COVID is a fast spreading. Otherwise, any this bio threat need these kind of mitigations. Of course, these opportunities are open, and many such open problems are there. And it is for us to identify and take it. And when we are taking it, we should not take it only with a local focus, because we do not know whether the local person will be able to take it or not. We should take it with the export potential as and when government says it, and with the international collaboration, at least for certification. If you have a product and if you are taking PPE, the FDA certification, straight away, as and when government clears export, it will have an export orientation. Yes, that is an example I am stating. Many open problems are there.
Thank you, ma'am. So I just want to say in here, I have been in the regulatory affairs field in almost 24 plus years. In medical device, I've been in since 2006. So when I started in 1996, regulatory affairs was a developing or emerging area, okay? Regulations were being put in place in different countries and it was emerging. There was no school as such, but by the time 10 years passed, there were postgraduates, there were MScs which were there available in many colleges. Right now, in pharmaceutical colleges, regulatory affairs is at least one subject which students learn, and quality control, quality assurance are all part of it. Now, there are online courses, there are societies called as RAPS, Regulatory Affairs Professional Society, TOPRA, and many others. And apart from this, local, within India, colleges have started recognizing the need for this area and the need for the resources within this area. So they have started their own short-term, seminars or workshops where people can learn what is the science and what it needs and what it can be done. But as medtech is an industry where it is emerging every day, okay, it doesn't have any boundaries now. Now we are talking about IoT, telemedicine, 3D printing, so many things. But all these do not have anything which is, a box has been put and you can do it. But it all depends on people. It all depends on our youth, how inquisitive they can be, how they can be keeping abreast of the developments, and how they are innovative, creative, and open. That is what is required. They need to be open in their mindset to take the basic information they have to next step. We have to be our own innovators. The youth have to be our own innovators, and only after they start doing it, then the processes can fall in place. We're still at a very beginning for many of the technologies. We cannot have, well-defined curricula and a course at this point of time. Traditional, of course, there are lots. There are n number of them. Supply chain, logistics, manufacturing, quality, pharmaceutical sciences and all. But for these, we have to be innovative ourselves. Thank you.
Okay. So the question that comes up is, like you said, Indira, that it has a lot of facets to it. You have cloud, you have telemedicine, you have embedded, you have IoT, you have medicine, and you have pharmaceutical and all that, right? But generally from the engineering side, if you see, what is the kind of combination of skill sets that we think will bear greater chance of students getting into this space? So you may be a medical electronics person, but your cloud, IoT, embedded, all these things are taught in much greater detail in the other streams. So which is a good mix of courses, if I may so say, that we think will prepare the students for career in medtech?
If you just ignore all the nicer definitions, going down the levels, it is engineering. The basic is it's engineering, and the second is it's a medical science. Okay, so anything you have a combination of these two would be the best thing, because the requirements varies from company to company. Consumable medical device company could probably looking at a very basic kind of engineering, or even a life science person can work on that. But when you go higher up, when you're talking about robotics, you just don't need just the engineering, but you also need to understand, I have a robotic arm. Yes, I created a robotic arm, but then that arm needs to get into the anatomy of a person, right? So how does that anatomy go in? How does it work? Does it remain the materials which are being used? So what happens is, it's just not the engineering science, it's just not the medical science. So depending on situations, depending on the company in which a person joins, you need to add on more specific skill sets. Maybe materials you might need to know. if you are in R&D, if you are working on a quality control side, you need to know what are the international standards which are available, who is developing them. If they are developing, BIS is a standard for developing organization. If BIS is working on it, how do we contribute to BIS to help them in developing an international standard? So right now, medtech industry is so very, very, very dynamic and evolving. These two sciences, engineering and medical science, or even a life science, would help them, help youth to develop into whatever interest they have, depending on the capabilities and motivation and things like that.
Okay, so I think we have another 5 minutes, just time for 2 questions, but I want this question to get answered by both Divya and Akash. You've just graduated from college, you've done medical electronics. If you were knowing that you're now in a job, what were the kinds of courses you would have liked to have done when you were in college, which you were not able to do?
Yes, sir. I wish I had explored more on scaling solutions on cloud. Like there are, cloud service providers like providing it as a software as a service, even platform as a service, like AWS, Google Cloud, Azure. And there are many such sub-services in that, like facial recognition software, natural language processing, where it can be incorporated into our projects for signal processing, for image processing, to make it much more dynamic. And because we have been exposed to say what is neural networks, how to construct a deep learning network, but we have it ready made as frameworks. What we needed to know is how to incorporate our needs or solutions into these frameworks. So like courses like fundamentals on Azure or AI in Azure, such courses would have been very much helpful if I had it in college.
Akash?
So Divya talked about, I think, getting into the IT field. But I feel, for getting into the IT field, I think we need to know a lot about these aspects about cloud and coding as such, because we weren't given that a lot of exposure to coding in our engineering. So we actually focus more on the biomedical instrumentation and image processing, medical image processing. So yeah, for that career-wise, we weren't ready for IT, I guess. So I think, I've I think we need to, I had to work on more projects in my domain and incorporate more of embedded systems. I actually wanted to try PCB designing for small medical devices. And that is one thing I would work more on in the future as well.
Okay. This is a question for Dr. Manimari. Defense has been running a lot of these hackathons and all that in the recent past. How can students take part in these hackathons that the defense announces, and what are the kind of opportunities that defense would throw out as projects or hackathons like this that students can leverage?
Yeah, first one is all government, DRDO and all government research institutions take limited students as project trainees for 6 months, for example, 6 months or 8 months projects in their field, one they take. The second one is now Dare to Dream, Kalam's Dare to Dream competitions are coming up with the different fields. Now, even for biomedical fields, we have put it across. Sooner you will see them, and students can participate in that competition. And last year, I think a year back, we have conducted a competition in robotics. It is called DRUS, so national competition. In that, many colleges only we have taken academic institutes to participate, and 4 awards have been conducted. Almost around 500 education institutions participated in DRUS. And addition to that, we have life science research boards, whereas double is handling life science bio Medical Board, LSBD, Biomedical Devices Board. And many such boards are there in LSRB, Life Science Research Boards, where the projects can be taken up by educational institutions. If they can put a project. Addition to that, many of the educational institutions can put us a CARS project, that is acquisition of research services. That funding is available. Additionally, DRDO gives a project called Extramural Research Facility, ERI and IPR facility, where DRDO headquarters is interacting so that they can take the projects. But these are all mainly educational institutions, because we are looking for responsibility. The students level, they have to join the educational institution and they can take as a research fellow or a student training, whatever it is. The professors can take. In addition, they can participate, the professors also can participate in our programs as review members or even observers, not an issue. In our related areas, they can be observers. Most of the biomedical areas what we are working on are not classified projects, only restricted. Surely they can visit, the students can visit what are the works we are doing, so that they can get inspiration, they can take it up. And now government is, these COVID days may continue, it looks like, so they are all work at home, and like that only assignments are also, government is encouraging taking students as work at home students, whatever you call it, that kind of internship also they are encouraging. Of course, these our institutes are a very small number. Total DRDO strength is 7,000 plus only. Scientists, so establishments of LS cluster, we are working around 8 to 9 establishments. We are working in LS cluster, life science cluster. So very few numbers of students compared to the whole country we can take. Of course, many CSIR labs also they can take. Of course, we can work with the startups. Now, government is encouraging that working with startups in the projects. A small portion of it, the startups can give and contribute. DEBEL itself is having going to take up projects in exoskeleton. As on now, also it is having a running projects on exoskeleton. Coming days, this exoskeleton is robotics plus biomedical, because it should work along with the human being. So in this area, many startups are required, because this technology is not yet well proven in the worldwide. It's a very advanced technology. Naturally, startups can contribute. Of course, the country itself looking for a youth dimension. Every project I am asked, what is the average age of your project team? And government is encouraging youth joining as a startup or student groups or industry participation, a small scale industry, and whatever forms they are. These models are well encouraged by the government. Either they are calling a scatterbelt model of abroad, they are calling it. So many of these are, we will be seeing in the coming days, these kind of contribution by many different institutions joining and coming up to solve a particular assignment. In this itself, these COVID days, we have taken up indigenization of ventilator. Actually, 2004, the DEBEL with the SBMT, Society of Biomedical Devices, we have taken up a ventilator design with an academic institution and a private industry, which has been sustained. Subsequently, it has been handled by some other company. And when this requirement of massive requirement of ventilators are required by this country, by our country, Bharat Electronics has taken over the responsibility and got the order from Ministry of Health for supplying of 30,000 indigenous critical care ventilators for COVID-19 purposes. The indigenization of components were a very important role. Many of them have been achieved in-house in DRDO with a double contribution. So this was possible because many of us could come out, industries have come to interact with us through webinars. Many of the startups company, almost around 500 to 800 companies have interacted to find out and finally filtered a few of them. And these components have been indigenized, and this today Bharat Electronics is rolling out that the total 30,000 ventilators. Imagine the capacity of our country. So this indigenization is going to come, and it is going to be the talk of the day in coming days.
Thank you. So actually, Dr. Manimoy touched on something very nice, and we don't have much time on that also. But the world of startups is a wonderful place also, which offers a lot of opportunity. You have a lot of startups now coming in the medtech space, building typically consumer devices and portable devices, consumer devices, or even devices for hospitals, automating a lot of equipment that were not automated earlier by retrofitting and so on and so forth. So that is a lot. So we open for questions now, so people can ask questions. There is one question that is for Indira. What is the process to get approval for any medical device? Is there any good low-cost companies which help in doing this approval assistance?
Yeah, so this is what is the most important part. Okay, we can develop a product, but then the product has to see the day of the light. And regulatory affairs is the one which actually does all this. CDSCO, the regulator, the regulating arm of Ministry of Health, has got all the guidelines and website information and everything. It is on the website. There are a lot of consultants who are based out of Delhi or who are based out of Bangalore also. Okay, so the first thing we need to understand is if it is a local manufacturing one, so how to get an approval for manufacturing and how to get the product approval. These are all well defined within the guidelines of the CDSCO and on the website. So there are other, information sources like the RAPS, the Emergo. These are, organizations which are online who provide all this information. And people can reach out to me. I can, as a service to the society, I can always tell them how they can go about getting the regulatory approvals, or at least guide them to the right people who can help them out on that.
Sure. So another question is saying that from snapshot diagnostics, we're moving into continuous diagnostics and treatment with the typical theranostics space, which is diagnostics and therapy. So the therapy is adjusted online as and when the diagnosis is done or data collected is diagnosed, which could also be continuous. So the question that is being asked here is, how could students be trained for the shift in how therapy is given, and what is the kind of experience that is needed for it?
Well, it's for me.
I mean, anybody can answer.
I think generally, if there is a new technology and new, type of treatment and new therapy which is being done, the company which is working on those therapies are the ones who actually train the physicians, the concerned surgeons, and all the related healthcare people, because technology would vary from company to company and how to use them, how to be, getting the maximum benefit of those technologies. The company which develops those things are the ones who generally train them. This is what I've seen in the medtech industry as of now. But I'm not aware of something which is general and public. There are some foundations which are working on that, but not specifically aware of that.
Okay. So there is a question which is something that one has been facing, but very controversial, but I'm not sure if one can answer it here, is is the race for anti-coronavirus treatment driven by need for wellness or wealth? Yeah, because most hospitals are charging a very hefty sum to treat people with wellness. But I think this question as it is does not relate to medtech as what we are discussing. So I wouldn't think it would be prudent to answer such a question.
So we can let the companies develop the treatment and then let the government decide what they want to do about it.
Yeah, so there is another question in lines of what I had asked as a question. There's a glaring skill gap in medical devices ecosystem. How do we address them?
Sir, can you repeat? I didn't gap
There
in
are
what?
glaring skill gaps in medical devices ecosystem.
Yes.
How do we address them?
So usually medtech companies do take interns and trainees, and they do. They have started an activity which they go to colleges and talk about technologies, upcoming technology or their own technology which they are doing. These are still, in the nascent stage. It depends on company to company how they are taking up these activities. But when a company is hiring its own resource, generally, as I said, they would look at basic qualities of what basic engineering science or a medical science, and then add on the qualifications which is required specific to the product which the company is dealing with on their on-job training. So this is how it is being managed as of today. But in US, actually, there is in Minneapolis, which is a medtech hub, their companies have collaborated to come up with some courses which are related to their own resource requirement. RA is one of them, quality assurance is one of them. So such kind, we still have to see, we still have to work towards that. But it's individual companies' efforts at this point of time to train their own people on their own technology.
One thing that I've seen is a lot of these companies set up centers of excellence in academic institutions. Like in the IT space, IBM goes and sets up some infrastructure and training and all that to address skill gaps. I've seen GE do that, for example, in the medical system space. Philips also does that in the medical electronics space. So that is another way by which if the college is able to attract these companies to come and set up a lab that they would sponsor and run, that's another way of addressing the skill gap. Right? This is a
I just want to add this gap in that glaring gap of that is because one is these two professions are merging here, medical as well as engineering. So naturally, there will be a gap of total understanding who will be the leader, who will be the follower, or a system engineering. And understanding is from the educational stream itself, we keep them away. We never think that they can merge together. So that is maybe the reason, in my opinion, the streams are so away. When it is merging in biomedical, we see this gap striking us. So maybe educational system should rethink of this orientation.
I have a very interesting example there in Coimbatore. So the same management runs an engineering college and a medical college and a hospital. So there I've seen very good collaboration between students from engineering and students from medicine working to address the same problem as a team. And they have a hospital owned by the same management where they can go and try. It's also very difficult to get hospitals to agree to pilot something, right? So when all three have come under the same management, I've seen good collaboration happen.
I agree. It's a mutual respect and a collaborative. This one only will break this, not by a rule or a law.
Yeah.
So
there's one question for Dr. Manimori. Does DRDO foster increased academia industry partnerships can graduates or postgraduates apply for projects, internships as opportunities? As opportunities are very limited. So I think they're asking whether they can apply to DRDO for projects.
I told in the beginning itself that DRDO take academic collaboration very serious one. As on now, MHRD has approved 500 research posts in DRDO. That is, MHRD is selecting the PhD students, but the next 3 to 5 years of PhD, their assignment will be in DRDO. That means our secretary has signed this collaborative one recently. So that we are going very strong in the academic collaborations in the coming days. And even otherwise, we have these medias called ER-IPR, extramural research, where the DRDO is encouraging. Another one is CARS. In every projects and every establishment, research services can be taken up from the education academia, where the particular deliverable of project can be taken up in the project area. Other than that, we have a strong academic collaborations in institutions like Jadavpur University, JCB CAT, and as well as RIC in IIT Madras campus, and Bardiyar University collaboration in DRDO BU Center in Coimbatore, and many such. With IIT Delhi, we have a center, JTC. So many academic collaboration centers also we are doing. Other than that, the research boards are there: Life Science Research Board, Ordnance, Army Research Board, Air Force Research Board, Naval Research Boards. All these research boards takes the projects with academia. The project can be submitted to them. They are available in the DRDO websites. So yes, academic collaboration is a very one anchor of DRDO projects. So without that, the researchers, the TRL levels, readiness levels of the project will not take it up. Yes, when you are taking a very path-breaking research problem to a product, it should cross through all the levels. Academia collaboration is a very important milestone in that. Yes. Regarding student training, we have very limited student training, but we take projects for MTech projects, sizable number, 6 to 8 months.
Okay. So there's one more question, but I think this was answered earlier, which is saying that there's a large gap in regulatory skill sets, and now that companies want typically bring back office to India, the medtech companies will bring them to India. So what are the courses that one can do? I think Indra did answer that, saying that there are no set courses right now that she could think of that will address this requirement.
Mohanji, I just want to add in here, there are workshops which are being conducted by colleges, and there is a MS in regulatory science from Manipal that I'm aware of. Some colleges are also adding on, but otherwise there are a lot of online courses which can always be done.
Okay, so we've I think come to the end of our session, overshotted by 3 minutes. So thank you very much, panelists, and I hope the students have had a very engaging session. Anamika, over to you.
Thank you, sir.
A big thank you to all the panelists for gracing your important works and sharing with us your thoughts and opinions today. I extend my sincere gratitude to Mr. Mohan Sundaran sir for joining us today as our moderator. Thank you so much for the wonderful insights shared with the youth through this session. Thank you.